Hi everyone and welcome along. Today we're going to paint one of the first signs of spring, and this is a perfect subject if you're planning on doing some nature journaling this year. We're painting willow catkins, so grab your paints and let's get started. So we're lucky enough to have the real thing in front of us today. So these willow catkins, they're amazing little sort of fluffy little feather boas hanging down off the branches. When sort of earlier stages, you can see this one here, it's much more tightly packed, and then they sort of stretch out and elongate as they grow. We've got little buds forming on the branches there. So the only thing to be careful of when you're handling these is the pollen. There's a lot of pollen held in the catkins, so you'll see a little sort of cloud of fuzz if you shake them about, so just be careful and make sure your hands are clean after handling them. So I'm going to begin with a sort of curve, and then I'm going to have one coming off it and one coming off again. So the branches sort of grow like that, and then at these points, this is where you can just have a little sort of branch coming off, whether it's sort of coming from above like that, and then that's where we can have our catkins growing. So we're going to use a lot of green gold, I think, in this. So if you don't have green gold, you can mix up sap green and cadmium yellow, but I'm actually going to be using both sap green and cadmium yellow as well. Now this might not seem like the most exciting thing to paint if you're into painting flowers, landscapes, whatever, but it actually represents a very exciting moment in nature because it means spring is on the way, and I am so ready for that. And it's also wonderful if you're interested this year in maybe tracking the seasons in a sketchbook, journaling a bit of nature. Well, this is your starting point, really. This is where it all begins. So I'm now just getting a bit of sap green. I had a little bit of cadmium yellow on my brush, so getting a nice yellowy green. Lovely. Right, so yeah, we're going to begin with the catkins. And I'm going to take a size 2 brush, and I'm going to begin with some green gold, and I'm going to begin by painting a little line, and then I've just cleaned the brush off and it's just a bit watery now. And what I'm going to do is just with that wet brush, is I'm just sort of dabbing almost like a zigzag of dabs down to the base and sort of finishing it off with a bit of a rounded bottom. So I'm going to do that again, and of course they sort of tend to snake out from each other, but you tend to get sort of 2 growing in a pair, but on a branch you can have more than 2 growing, so we could have a third one on this particular junction, but they tend to grow in pairs, but not exclusively. So in painting this one will just be settling in a little bit, just drying a little, and I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm going to take some of my sap green, and I'm just going to flick a little bit of colour on the edges on that wet catkin. Not too much because the green is subtle, but I'm always sort of evening up the shape. And I'm also going to use some brown tones. I want some yellow ochre, and I'm sort of purposefully mixing these up now, letting these just sort of settle in a little bit longer. Watercolour is a waiting game, or it's sometimes a move as fast as you possibly can game, but it's all about timings that gives you these wonderful effects. So for now what we're doing is we're just letting things just settle in a tiny bit more. Okay, so I'm going to add now just a few little dashes and a few down the middle as well of the yellow ochre. And then finish off with some burnt sienna ones. Not too many. And you'll see that it's finally starting to dried on the page, so it's not bleeding and blending quite so much. So that's pretty perfect in terms of the sort of time frame you want for your catkins. Okay, so we're going to paint a few more on and then we'll finish off with the branch. Right, I've got some browns mixed up now. I've got some burnt sienna with some Payne's grey, burnt sienna with yellow ochre, and then over here, a colour I don't use that much, is raw umber. Just woken that up, and I'm going to begin with my size 2 brush, painting in the base of the branch, and I'll take some of the shadowy tones. Okay, I'm going to go down to a size 0 brush now because I need a bit more control. And at this point the branch is going to fork. I'm just going to dab the brush a bit so it sort of blends nicely into that, and I'm also going to place in a little bud, just a little bud shape for the moment in there. And then we're going to carry on along up the branch. So the branches sort of undulate in terms of thin and thick. They sort of fan out a little bit whenever you get to a junction with some buds and some catkins on. So I'm going to do the little branch coming off there and just soften it into that catkin. And a branch that comes up. Now I'm going to sort of start from the other end here. And with these little ones I'm just going to add a few little sort of fluffy bits as if they're literally growing off from the branch, and the buds on my on the real thing I'm looking at, they're a little bit greener at the end here. So just add a few little bits there. adding lowlights and highlights. So a low light, someone asked me the other day on the comments, what is a low light? Well, a highlight is where it's sort of, you're putting in something to make it look lighter, either a little bit of unpainted space that you're leaving to create a highlight, or painting in maybe with some opaque white or something. Well, a low light is when you take a darker colour like this and you're just darkening things down like that. Okay, we'll let it dry and then finish it off. I'm now going to add a little bit of Payne's grey into my greens down here, because I want to get a slightly shadowy colour. And I've got my 4/10 brush, because what I want to do is add just a very little bit of extra detail. So I'm just very lightly kind of scribbling the brush in from one side to create just a little bit more of a sense of the separate little tears on the catkin. And the other thing I can do whilst I'm working my way up is use a bit of Payne's grey in my shadow mix. So I've just put it in with the browns there to also find little areas for a bit more detail. So the 4/10 brush is brilliant for this. So we're basically putting in our shadow and finishing off the piece. So up we come. So a few little gnarly textured lines, a little bit of shadow. I put a few extra green buds in there. And now, clean my brush up, just get down to the greenier shadow mix now. You really want the bare minimum on your brush, so just trying to get the right balance. There we go. It's quite a dry brush I'm using here. I'm just scribbling it down. So yeah, for those of you who are interested in, or find sort of journaling or documenting things really nice and therapeutic, then in the UK at least, and I imagine most Northern Hemisphere countries, we're starting to see the beginnings of spring, and it's the perfect time to start noticing what's around you and being able to be just about warm enough to feel your fingers and go and sit outside, or maybe even just go for a walk, take some photos and come back and document it. I don't recommend sort of being able to go and like pick things off trees and branches. This just happened to be in our garden, so I was able to snip a bit of willow off. But of course, you know, if you're in a park or public property and things, it's not really okay to go and help yourself. So take a photo, go do a drawing, but it's just a wonderful way of connecting with nature, and I don't know anyone who doesn't feel better after doing a bit of that. Okay, so we're just going to go through, pop in a bit more shadow, and we'll be finished. And there you have some willow catkins, something lovely to paint as spring approaches. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one and that you are getting out into nature and getting inspired. I want to say a massive thank you to my patrons for their support, because that support enables us to keep creating videos like these that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you got on with that one. And of course, if you never want to miss another video, just hit the subscribe button and the little notification bell, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!